Hey internet friends. The year was 1996. The Spice Girls released their debut single, Wannabe. American President Bill Clinton won a second term, making him the first Democrat since Roosevelt to serve 2 full terms. The State of Israel elected Benjamin Netanyahu as their prime minister. The divorce of Prince Charles and Princess Diana was finalized, with Diana officially forfeiting her right to serve as queen. Former NFL player and actor O.J. Simpson testified for the first time in what would go on to be the most publicized criminal trial in history. A successful rapper by the name of Tupac was gunned down in Las Vegas. The Summer Olympic Games were held in Atlanta, Georgia, with 197 countries represented. Dolly the sheep, allegedly the first mammal ever cloned by an adult somatic cell, was born. And just as the year was coming to a close, a 6-year-old beauty queen took her last breath, her body discovered in her family's Boulder, Colorado home the day after Christmas. For years to come, the media would have a frenzy with JonBenét Ramsey's murder, plastering her face across tabloids, throwing accusations of blame at a cast of characters, captivating the masses and redirecting their attention to the latest distraction, bowls of pineapple and milk, as well as various intruder theories, overshadowing the fact that a millionaire's daughter was found in the basement of her family home, her body showing signs of chronic sexual abuse, and her back left with traces of stun gun marks, and discovered within her own father's office a videotape titled How to Create a Mind Slave Using a Stun Gun. But as the shadow of the Ramseys' numerous defamation lawsuits tower over those who dare question their involvement with their daughter's murder, I feel like I need to make something very clear. I'm not here to tell you who killed JonBenet. I'm here to tell you why they got away with it.
All of us who are parents fully expect that our children will live long after we are gone. And when it does not happen that way, there is a great void of grief and loss.
In order to understand why JonBenet's case was mishandled on numerous occasions, getting to know the Ramseys is essential. Let's begin with John Ramsey, a former Navy officer who moved to Atlanta, Georgia in the early 70s, starting a computer firm that merged with 2 other firms to form what is now known as Access Graphics. In 1991, the same year that the Ramseys moved to a 15-room Tudor-style brick home in Boulder, Colorado, while maintaining a summer home in Michigan, Access Graphics was acquired by Lockheed Martin, an American global aerospace, defense, security, and advanced technologies government contractor. And it should be noted that Lockheed Martin is no stranger to scandal, especially when it comes to bribery and blackmail. In addition to the 2 children he fathered with his wife Patsy, John had 3 children from a previous marriage. His 22-year-old daughter Elizabeth died in a car wreck in 1992. And 4 years later, the same year, Access Graphics cleared over $1 billion, and John was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the Boulder Chamber of Commerce. His daughter JonBenet was murdered. John's wife Patsy was born in Gilbert, West Virginia. In 1980, Patsy married John, and together they had 2 children, their son Burke and their daughter JonBenet. In 1993, Patsy was diagnosed with ovarian cancer that would ultimately claim her life in 2006. It's been reported that Patsy's family were members of Masonic fellowships, and while this information cannot be verified given the nature of secret societies being, well, secret, the claim can be somewhat substantiated in the way that the Ramseys presented their home and their daughter. Black and white Masonic checkerboards decorating both. Growing up, Patsy and her sister were beauty queens. Patsy won the title of Miss West Virginia in 1977, when she was just 20 years old, and she was frequently hired for ribbon cuttings by then-Governor Jay Rockefeller, along with former KKK member and Senator Robert Byrd. This connection is relevant given that just last year in the released Podesta emails, a curious email popped up from Tamara Luzzatto, who was chief of staff for both Jay Rockefeller and Hillary Clinton. In the email, Luzzatto listed out her grandchildren, their names, as well as their respective ages, reporting that they would arrive by Uber for the recipient's entertainment, listing details about heating the pool and a possible swim. While this in itself is hardly conclusive, the email paired with Tamara Luzzatto's website, Evie's Crib, is suspect, especially since the website's tagline advertises guests to spend time online with her grandchild, raw and uncut. Patsy's connection to former Senator Robert Byrd is of interest when taken into consideration with Kathy O'Brien's claims about the senator. Kathy alleged that she was a victim of the CIA's MKUltra project, a mind control program which the CIA admitted to, and she claimed that she was Robert Byrd's sex slave. The connections between the Ramsey family and the powerful network of individuals tied to the government and the military-industrial complex are noteworthy. Moving on, the Ramsey's son, Burke, was 9 at the time of his sister's murder, and he's been the object of media scrutiny ever since. A popular theory being circulated in recent years, and it even aired on CBS, suggests that Burke was the one to murder his sister, and his family covered up for him, staging JonBenet's death to appear like a botched kidnapping. A year before his sister's death, it was reported by the ex-housekeeper that Burke had struck his sister with a golf club out of anger, leaving a scar on her cheek. This served as the basis for the theory that Burke murdered JonBenet by accident. But if you subscribe to this theory and believe that the Ramseys covered for their son, you've mentally established the Ramseys as liars. So why wouldn't you believe that they'd lie about their son smacking their daughter upside the head with a golf club, as a means of explaining JonBenet's injury? Did her brother at 9 years old repeatedly sexually assault her too? If so, where did he learn that behavior? Additionally, the ex-housekeeper also alleged that Burke had a history of scatological problems. This narrative re-emerged once again in 2016 during a CBS special, during which FBI Special Agent Jim Clement claimed that Burke had smeared feces on a box of candy that his sister got for Christmas, and that the crime scene technicians had discovered feces smeared across a bathroom wall in the Ramsey home. It should be noted that, in Burke's defense, fecal smearing, in addition to being a sign of a mental disorder like OCD or schizophrenia, is a physical indicator of abuse, specifically physical or sexual abuse, a behavior utilized by children as a means of showing distress when they're still too young to put their emotions into words. The Ramsey's daughter, JonBenet, was 6 years old at the time of her death, a kindergartner at High Peaks Elementary School in Boulder. She was crowned Little Miss Colorado in 1995 and held several other titles during her short life. But despite her parents' efforts to doll her up and make her appear like a blatantly sexualized tiny child adult, JonBenet was still a child. It was reported by the Ramsey's ex-housekeeper that JonBenet had started wearing pull-ups again in the months leading up to her death, and Patsy had covered JonBenet's mattress in plastic due to her frequent bedwetting. The ex-housekeeper described both JonBenet and Burke as frequent bedwetters. While many children go through a phase of bedwetting when they're young, regressive bedwetting can be a sign of sexual abuse. However, both of these children could have been exhibiting signs of anxiety relating to their mother's terminal cancer diagnosis. On December 20th, 1996, Access Graphics held a celebratory luncheon in honor of reaching their $1 billion mark. 3 days later, on the 23rd, the Ramsey family hosted a Christmas party at their home with around 30 guests. At 6:47 p.m., an attendee dialed 911 and hung up. An officer responded to the call, leaving the Ramsey residence shortly after being assured there was no emergency. JonBenet attended a play date with her friend Megan, telling Megan's mother that Santa Claus was going to pay her a special visit after Christmas, and that it was a secret. On December 25th, a day many regard as Jesus Christ's birthday, but serves as a major pagan holiday celebrating the birthday of Mithras, the god of a Roman mystery religion, John checked on his private plane, returning a few hours later, then transported the family to their friend's Christmas party. Back at home, post-party, John put JonBenet to bed. This was the last time she was seen alive. On December 26th, at 2 a.m., a neighbor heard a scream that she characterized as piercing, and obviously from a child, lasting 3 to 5 seconds in duration. John and Patsy awoke early that morning in preparation for their family vacation to their Michigan home. John took a shower and got dressed while Patsy put on the same clothes from the day before, and she reapplied her makeup, proceeding to go downstairs to the kitchen. And at the bottom of the stairs, she discovered a handwritten note. It was a ransom note spanning 2.5 pages, indicating that JonBenet had been kidnapped, demanding $118,000 for her return, misspelling words like business only to turn around and properly spell the term attaché. The Ramseys checked JonBenet's room and confirmed she was missing, then proceeded to check on Burke, who they allegedly left sleeping, alone, in his room, despite the possibility of a kidnapper being at large in their massive 15-bedroom house. Patsy called 911, reporting her daughter's kidnapping. then immediately dialed their family friends, the Whites and the Fernies. Officer French was the first to arrive on the scene, reading the ransom note and conducting a quick search of the house, looking for a possible point of entry or even point of exit, which included a search of the basement. Officer French paused in front of the wine cellar door, secured only by a wooden latch, behind which was JonBenet's body. But the officer later claimed he was looking for entry points, and a wine cellar was an unlikely one. Thus, he skipped over it. Shortly after Officer French's arrival, the Whites and the Fernies appeared at the Ramsey residence, with Fleet White searching the basement, noting the broken window and suitcase underneath it. John later claimed he'd broken the window months prior. Fleet even searched the wine cellar but claimed it was too dark and he couldn't find a light switch. Another oddity was the victims' advocates who arrived early that morning. The advocates were a group of trained individuals who helped families through traumatic events. They brought the Ramseys bagels and coffee. Then at one point, they wiped the Ramseys' kitchen counters down with spray cleaner, contaminating the crime scene. All the while, Burke was allegedly asleep, awoken hours later to get dressed and go over to the Whites' house. After Burke left, John Ramsey searched the basement alone, then re-emerged to assemble the ransom amount, $118,000. About 5 hours after the initial 911 call, JonBenet's room was sealed off by police, but the rest of the Ramsey residence was not. Representatives from the FBI swung by, but they left after a while, along with the remaining officers, leaving Detective Linda Ardent alone with the Ramseys and their friends. The detective instructed John Ramsey, along with his friends Fleet White and John Fernie, to do a top-to-bottom search of the house, which she later stated was to give John Ramsey something to do and keep his mind occupied. John Ramsey immediately went down to the basement with Fleet White and found JonBenet's body in the wine cellar, with duct tape over her mouth, a cord around her neck, her hands bound over her head, and her body covered in a blanket. John ripped the duct tape from her mouth and attempted to untie her hands, then carried her up the stairs, placing her on the floor, where she was then moved by the detective in front of the Christmas tree for unspecified reasons.
I ordered him to put JonBenet down. I knelt next to her and I leaned down to her face. And John leaned down opposite me, and his face was just inches from mine. And we had a nonverbal exchange that I will never forget. And as we looked at each other, I remember, and I wore a shoulder holster, tucking my gun right next to me and consciously counting, I've got 18 bullets.
Why did you do that?
Because I didn't know if we'd all be alive when people showed up.
20 minutes after JonBenet's body was found, John phoned his pilot, but the police instructed the family not to leave town. 8 hours after Patsy's original 911 call, the Ramsey house was secured as a crime scene. Later that night, under police surveillance at a friend's house, Patsy asked for Valium, sobbing, asking where John was. He had been at the airport, and when he returned, they both got Valium, waking periodically to ask for more pills. The results from JonBenet's autopsy revealed the cause of death to be asphyxia by strangulation, accompanied by head trauma. Also noted was the chronic genital inflammation and foreign matter in the vagina, pointing at repeated and recent sexual abuse that was verified by a panel of experts. Additionally, JonBenet had a strange red heart scribbled on her palm at the time of death, and the marks on her back were attributed to a two-pronged stun gun. However, no stun gun was found at the residence, just a videotape in her father's office titled How to Create a Mind Slave Using a Stun Gun. 10 years after her death, on August 27, 2006, MSNBC reported the fact that the stun gun marks were found on JonBenet's back and broadcast photos of these two-pronged marks. MSNBC quoted Taser Corporation's admission that these marks indicated use of its product. But that report was too little, too late, because years earlier, in 1999, a grand jury indicted Patsy and John Ramsey for child abuse resulting in death and being an accessory to a crime, including murder, in connection to their 6-year-old daughter, JonBenet. But a prosecutor declined to sign it, citing a lack of evidence. Was the lack of evidence by chance or by design? Whoever murdered JonBenet got away with it for the following reasons. JonBenet's murder was the only homicide in Boulder, Colorado that year. The police department was woefully unprepared in investigating homicides. As they were building their case against the Ramseys, Boulder police expressed their frustration on numerous occasions at their investigation being stifled by the prosecutor, who was a little too chummy with the defense team. Whether the police department's lackluster procedure and mishandling of evidence was a result of incompetence or purposeful obstruction is a debate for another time. But the fact is, they didn't do a good job at investigating this little girl's murder, and the Ramseys didn't do anything to help them. They were unhelpful from day one. Instead of speaking to police in the days following JonBenet's death, the Ramseys went on television, creating the illusion of cooperation in the public eye. The media played a key role in the outcome of JonBenet's case, which makes sense because the Ramseys hired a PR firm in the wake of their daughter's death. The media treated the years following her murder like a pageant of sorts, where all the suspects pranced around on the world stage in an effort to win favor in the court of public opinion. The lack of journalistic integrity was evident. Theories were paraded like facts, and facts were discredited as theories. All the while, the most damning evidence was not mentioned until years later. Instead, the media latched on to hoaxers like the schoolteacher John Mark Carr, who was arrested in Thailand in connection to JonBenet's murder, whose charges were eventually dropped due to lack of evidence. A woman came forward in 2000, reporting that, as a child, she had been the victim of sexual abuse by distant relatives Fleet White Jr. and his father, but also John Ramsey. She further reported being prostituted for pornography. While police took her story seriously enough to interview her, her story was dubbed a fabrication to discredit the FBI. A lot of weird stuff happened over the last 21 years. In 2005, Natalie Holloway went missing, becoming a high-profile news story. And a year later, Patsy Ramsey died from cancer. And in 2007, John Ramsey began dating Natalie Holloway's mother. In 2015, former Boulder Police Department Police Chief Mark Beckner did a live Ask Me Anything question and answer on a popular website called Reddit, but then quickly deleted his responses after claiming he didn't realize it would warrant so much publicity. So it appears that either the Boulder Police Department still hasn't figured out how to properly handle themselves in regards to the Ramsey case, or they're just trying to tell us something. The individuals responsible for JonBenet's murder got away with it due to police incompetence. The Ramseys and their friends' contamination of the crime scene, as well as their numerous high-level connections, like that of Lockheed Martin, which was in the process of selling Access Graphics at the time, and it's speculated that Lockheed Martin played a role in delaying the trial. JonBenet is, unfortunately, one of many, but she was white. Her family was rich, and she looked like a doll. And still, her case was handled like her life never really mattered at all. Imagine the children who are murdered or disappear every year, and their tragedies are totally ignored by our media. We can't help JonBenet. She's dead. But we can potentially stop the cycle of abuse if we identify the established patterns and familiar players in cases like JonBenet's and even Madeleine McCann's disappearance. We can stop the cycle of abuse if we set aside our trivial political agendas and understand that the agenda being pushed on us extends far beyond the political. It's an evil that's woven into the very fabric of our military-industrial complex and our nation's power structure, forming a network of abusers with a chain of command that reaches all the way to the very top. What do you think, internet friends? Who killed JonBenét Ramsey? Let me know. I always look forward to your comments. Thank you so much for watching, subscribing, and supporting my channel on Patreon.